Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of Real Life Ghost Stories.
Halfway to 30.
I don't know how much longer we can keep this whole counting joke going. I think we need to...
Last one, maybe.
Maybe the last one. I know you all love it, though, so, you know.
Maths with Dan.
Our review this week is something slightly different. We went rogue.
Very rogue.
So usually we do a film review, and the film review will be back next week. However, this week we've been away. We were in the lovely town of Oxford. So instead of doing a film review, we've decided to review a ghost tour instead.
Ooh.
I know. You were there.
Oh, yeah.
We are reviewing Bill Spector's Ghost Trail today.
If he's not wearing a top hat, it's not Bill.
That's important to remember. We went on Bill Spector's Ghost Tour. It kicked off at 6:30 last night. It goes on for about an hour and a half, a little bit longer.
And last night was freezing.
Last night was fucking minus 20 degrees or something. Like,
I don't think it was that cold.
All right, it was that cold. I was so cold. Before we even start with this review, I would recommend that you do this during the summer when it's warm at night time.
I would second that.
Not when it's minus 5,000 degrees and you're freezing the whole way around. It was £10 each to go on this ghost tour. What did you think of it?
I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't like...
Well, sorry, Dan, we're drinking at the moment, and Dan just made this weird...
I'm pretty sure I just burped on the thing.
So let's go again. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't quite what I was expecting in terms of scares. It was a bit more theatrical than that, I think.
I've never been on a ghost tour before. Have you ever been on a ghost tour?
No.
No, I'd never done one before, so I don't really know what I was expecting.
Kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
Well, I did the Shanghai Tunnels in Portland, didn't I? Which was a ghost tour.
Oh, yeah, you did.
But it wasn't that kind of ghost tour, because it was like, we're going to take you underground and it's actually really dark and there's torches if you want them, but we recommend you don't. That was that kind of thing. So that was quite creepy, even though there was like 100 people down there, so it was a bit less scary than it should have been. But anyway...
Yeah, I think this was more of just, it was for entertainment purposes really more than anything else. And historically, I learned loads of stuff.
Yeah, there was loads of really cool, like, sort of...
The stories were great.
Gruesome stories, which I liked.
My favourite story was, there was one about the devil who was seen literally pulling a man through the iron grating of a window like minced meat. Oh, I loved it. That was my favourite story.
Yeah, that was a good story.
What was your favourite story?
I like the one about the underground river, when they were punting along the river and they saw a lady and they were dying, and the ghostly figure of the lady like saw them out the other side, but then like a couple of days later they found another punt with the body of two people in it, didn't they? So the lady
body of two people.
The bodies of two people. So the lady got her revenge, which I quite liked as a story. That was quite cool. But what I liked about him was I think it was quite, like I said, it was quite theatrical, and I like the fact that he sort of intertwined a little bit of magic into his tour.
Yeah, he did. Now, I absolutely adore magic, so if you're a magician, hit me up, because magic is my fave. I love it. And Dan and I are those people who get really sucked into magic tricks and then get really dramatic when the trick is revealed. There's a magic bar in Canterbury called Houdini's, and we were in there watching the magician, whose name is Guy Wade, doing magic tricks, and he literally said to us, "This is the simplest trick in the world. I cannot believe you've fallen for it." While Dan and I were like running around screaming, calling him a witch, because we didn't know, we couldn't understand how it was done.
After we like ruined his life for messing up a trick, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, he messed up a trick and we were like, "Oh, fucked it." We were very nice to him.
Yeah, Bill Spector did some really cool magic, I thought, like little sort of sleight of hand tricks and stuff. But the biggest trick was when he set a book on fire, and both me and Emma were not looking in the right direction, so it kind of lost its impact. We were looking in the window, being like, "Oh, something's going to happen in the window." No, and then behind us, he set a book on fire. Everyone else was like, "Ooh!" We were like, "What? Oh shit, something's on fire." We missed it. But it was the knife as well, cutting his arm off at the end there. That was gruesome. I mean, we were stood at the wrong angle a little bit, because I could kind of see where the blood was
I know. We kind of ruined it for ourselves.
I think it's a cracking little ghost tour to take kids on. I know he said not to.
Oh, I think kids would love it.
I think it's because I think he's a natural entertainer, and I think that's what made it quite entertaining.
It's full of dad jokes. and those cheesy "I need a volunteer from the audience" type things. But it was really sweet. And just my only issue was that it was minus 10 degrees, which is not his fault.
No.
I cannot blame Bill Spector for the
really
weather.
Can't. I mean, he's a powerful man, but maybe not that powerful.
But it was so cold, so I really struggled the whole way around. But if you are into history,
yeah,
I would absolutely recommend it, because the little stories, they're all true in terms of they all have a historical basis. So you learn some really interesting, cool historical facts on the way around.
And they were ghost stories, so it was a ghost tour, but it's not a ghost hunt. So don't go expecting necessarily to see anything.
I don't think I wasn't expecting a ghost hunt though.
I'm always expecting ghosts.
But I don't really know what I was expecting.
I spent ages looking at a castle window where the light was, waiting for it to change, like waiting for something to walk in front of it.
Oh, Dan was dying to see a ghost. Absolutely. All he wanted the whole way around was to see a ghost. And it didn't happen. I'm going to ask you a question to start off. What is your opinion on paranormal investigators?
I love them.
Why do you love them?
Because I'm obsessed with Zach Bagans.
Are you in love with Zach Bagans?
No, maybe.
I think you might be.
So there's different kinds of paranormal investigators. There's Zach Bagans paranormal investigators. They're obviously in it for the business.
Yeah.
One of my clients was a paranormal investigator from Kent, and he just did it for the love of the ghosts. So it's just like a hobby, and they're the ones that I really like.
See, I agree with that. So I cannot stand this whole Ghost Adventures, Most Haunted.
I love Ghost Adventures, Zach, if you're listening, just by the way.
Bullshit, because it's like a load of, especially Zach Bagans and that kind of Ghost Adventures thing, because it's very much like, bruh, did you hear that? It's like, yeah, well, you're in an old house. What do you expect to happen? Running around screaming because of a noise. Applying sort of explanations to things that are so outrageous. It's like, oh, that thing that makes noise. What do you call that thing that, like, there's like an ovulus and all these all this equipment where they're like, it just said demon. No, it didn't.
I don't like the I've said this before on the podcast, but I don't like the little Xbox One where it makes the dancing figure.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Don't really know what I'm seeing there. It's not really anything, is it? It's just a stick man.
No, so I'm with you on that one. I don't like paranormal investigators when they're in it for big business, when they're in it for the money.
That's the thing. Like, if they're doing it to make a TV program,
yeah,
I really like that guy that we saw on YouTube, Paranormal Truth.
Oh,
he was just like, this is what an investigation is like, and I have like 7-hour videos on YouTube where it's literally 6.5 hours of them is just them sitting there going, is anything happening?
So they purposefully do the whole move away from the Hollywoodized hour-long episode where something happens every 5 minutes. And I quite like him as well. I wouldn't watch it because it's 7 hours long, which is really annoying because that must be really frustrating for them. But I think he's got a pretty big following. But I had a paranormal investigator contact me.
Ooh,
I know.
Exciting.
And I'm on the same wavelength as you in that I don't like it when it's for big business, but if it's your hobby,
hobbyists,
by all means,
yeah,
like, have fun, enjoy it. If it's your hobby and you're not trying to make money from vulnerable people, then I am all for it. If that's what you want to do with your time, fantastic. And there have been some amateur paranormal investigators who have found like pretty good evidence, like recordings or whatever. But our story takes place this week in a very particular location. So I wanted to give you a bit of history of the location.
Oxford?
It's definitely not Oxford. Would you believe it's Ireland?
No way.
And it's in a castle. I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of the history before we start the story. Are you ready? Now, I've taken this directly from the Charleville Castle website. Located in County Offaly in the Midlands of Ireland and bordering the town of Tullamore near the Shannon River, Charleville Castle is situated in Ireland's most ancient primordial oak woods, once the haunting ground of Ireland's Druids. Charleville Castle grew from paper doodles in early 1798 to grandiose plans by the end of that very eventful year in Ireland. It was built by Charles William Bury, Earl of Charleville, and was designed by Francis Johnson, one of the leading architects of the day. Charleville Castle is said to be the finest example of Gothic revival architecture in the country. This is a veritable Gothic castle of grand proportions. It owes its tin soldier fortress look to the celebration of victory over the Third French Revolutionary Expedition to Ireland, the first decisive victory by Britain over the revolutionary Republican movement which was sweeping across the monarchies and their colonies at that time. It took 14 years to complete this Gothic dream, a monument not only to a now forgotten power, but also to the people who made it possible, the Irish craftsmen and impoverished people. So that's taken directly from the Charleville Castle website. Now, this man contacted me, who is a paranormal investigator, and I was talking to him on Instagram, and his name is David Wenger. He is an American man who moved to Ireland.
Wenger?
I don't know, is it Wenger or Wenger?
Like Arsene Wenger?
I don't know if it's I'm sorry, David, I'm really sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I don't know if it's Wenger or Wenger. So we're going to say Wenger because...
Arsene Wenger.
Thank you for that. So he is a paranormal investigator, and for him, it started as a hobby, and then he became more and more interested in it. This guy has actually been on Ghost Hunters International, he's been on My Ghost Story, and he's had an article in the Independent newspaper in Ireland. So he's pretty serious about this stuff.
That's cool. I'm not actually opposed to the monetization of it, to be honest with you. I just think that those TV shows, because they're so condensed, they're a bit theatrical. But if you can make money from doing tours and stuff because people want to go on it.
As promised, here is one of my stories which happened here in Ireland. I will put a bit of background before I get into the story. I was born and raised in Canton, Massachusetts, to a middle-class family. I have 2 brothers and sisters. One of my brothers is my twin. Growing up together, we were plagued with what I now know as paranormal events. Of course, we didn't understand what was going on at the time. From growls, unexplained footsteps, and poltergeist activity, it was just something we dealt with. It wasn't until many years later when my siblings spoke of these things they heard, such as footsteps and so on. It was a bit of a relief we weren't going mad. I had always had an interest in the strange or paranormal, but I had no idea where it would bring me. In 2003, I moved to Dublin, Ireland to live with my fiancé. As I said, I've always been interested in the paranormal, so when those types of TV shows became popular, I was in heaven. I wanted to learn more, so I went to the internet and started researching everything I could from different types of hauntings, techniques, and paranormal groups in the area. I was lucky when I found the Paranormal Research Association of Ireland, who were still new in the field, but were looking for new members. I filled out a questionnaire and was delighted to find out I was invited to spend a night with them to see if I would fit into their group. The location for this investigation was Charleville Castle in Tullamore. This is where my story really begins. I looked up a bit of history of the location, as anyone would, but nothing prepared me for what happened. I do have to say at this point that this group conducted investigations from a logical perspective, not from a spiritual perspective, which I preferred. We were given our safety briefing, a history lesson on the location. When we were walking through the location, we tried to open one of the heavy oak doors and it was locked. We went and found the managing director to unlock the door, and he told us he had already unlocked it before we got there. He grabbed the handle and the door opened.
Whoa.
He told me, sure, it's just them having fun again. Later on, we split up into groups and investigated well into the wee hours. Although it wasn't a particularly active night for spirits, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. When the investigation was completed, we all went to one of the bedrooms to get some badly needed sleep. I found it tough to sleep from the excitement of being on my first investigation. At approximately 4 a.m, I heard what can only be described as a table being dragged across the floor above us. So what did I do? I grabbed my flashlight and went up the old stairs, half praying I didn't see anything, but it certainly wasn't going to stop me either. I went into the room above where everyone was sleeping, and it was completely empty. No tables, no chairs, just a layer of dust on the floor.
Oh.
I proceeded to look around and hurry back to my bed and try to sleep. Finally I did, from sheer exhaustion. While we were having breakfast the next morning, we were all chatting about the night before, and I asked if anyone had heard anything during the night. No one had, but the family that lives there did tell me that this was not the first time someone had heard that same noise from that same room. As time went on, I joined that paranormal group, and we've done many investigations with varied results. The more I delve into the history, the more I understand about this castle. The castle was built in 1878 by the Bury family. They had a daughter named Harriet who one day was asked by her nanny to go upstairs and wash her hands. On the way down, she thought it would be fun to slide down the banister. This would unfortunately lead to her death. She lost her grip and fell halfway down. Harriet was brought into the library, but alas, there was nothing they could do for her. She was only 8 years old. I am now the lead investigator for the group, but I am also a volunteer at Charleville Castle for the past 10 years. There have been many reports and stories, but there is one of my personal stories which involves Harriet herself. As Charleville Castle is a trust, there must always be someone in the castle for insurance and health and safety reasons. I was contacted by the managing trustee to see if I could house sit the castle for the weekend as the family were going away on a trip. By this time, I'd grown quite close to the family who lived there. I agreed to keep an eye on the place, and from a paranormal perspective, I thought it would be a great opportunity to see if something would happen if I was there alone. I did all the normal things we do as volunteers. I gave tours, cleaned the place up, and make sure everything was secure since it's a renovation in progress. I walked through the entire building, all 56 rooms, to make sure all was where it should be. In the daylight, this place is magical, but at night it's a very different story. I do feel like I have to say that I've never felt anything aggressive in the castle. After having dinner, secured all the doors and windows and turned off all the lights, I did one final check and headed to the room that I was staying in. I'd started the fire earlier, so I was happy to hang out and read a book before I got into bed. One thing I should mention is that I had to climb the very staircase where Harriet fell and died. As I'd done this many times before, I would usually say hello to Harriet when I arrived and good night when I was going to bed. This was the first time I'd ever stayed in this castle alone. The bedroom had sort of a weird entrance where there were 2 doors with a space between them. You'll know why this is important shortly. I was asleep for a few hours when I heard something out on the staircase and the landing. There were 2 floors below me and 1 floor above me. I wrote it off as maybe one of the cats who lived there until I heard a giggle outside my door. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or what, so I just went back to sleep. A while later, I heard something else. As I said, noise reverberates through this part of the castle, but this was loud. I sat up and listened, and I recognised the sound of a ball being bounced, and a young girl's voice very, very softly singing to herself. Some have described it as la la, giggle, la la. I jumped out of bed thinking someone had broken in and was messing around, but when I opened the first door and then the second door, there was nobody there. I'm not ashamed to say that I bolted back to bed and eventually went back to sleep. A couple of hours later again, I was woken up by another sound, but this was different. It was the sound of my bedroom door opening. Then the sound of little feet walking across the room. I couldn't see anything because it was pitch black, but I did sum up the courage to say, "Hello, Harriet. I'm very tired and it's been a long day. I could really use some sleep. Thank you for checking up on me." With that, I heard the sound of little feet and the door slowly close. There have been many reports of Harriet playing on the stairs and singing to herself. One of her most favourite things to do is play with girls' hair while they sleep. As I said, I've never felt anything bad in the castle, and there are more stories which I have been told in confidence. I've been back many, many times, but nothing compares to what happened to me that night alone in the castle. What are your thoughts?
I want to know more.
What do you want to know?
All them stories that he's been told in confidence, he's not allowed to tell us.
Well, I don't know how I can help you with that one.
Darn it. Yeah, well, I don't like little children and girls and...
Do you know what's interesting?
What?
I've actually been to this castle.
Ooh, have you?
I have been to this castle. They used to do, I don't know if they still do, but they used to do a music festival called Castlepalooza in the grounds of Charleville Castle. And they had some performances in the castle itself. And I can remember a friend of mine at the time was playing a gig at this festival and they got a tour around the castle. And he was saying that they were telling him about the ghost of a little girl called Harriet who haunted the castle. So it's cool that I've experienced this castle, I've been in it. It's very beautiful, very, very beautiful. And it is in the middle of nowhere. I would shit myself if I heard the door open and little feet pattering into the room.
Yeah, so would I.
Oh my God, I'd die. I'd be like, fuck you, Harriet. I would not have been as nice to Harriet as he was.
Thanks for doing a really creepy la-la as well. That was...
Did you enjoy it?
I could see you doing it and it still sounded creepy.
I worked hard on that. I just couldn't really sum up the energy to do a little girl giggle. I don't know if I'd be very good at that. That was lovely.
Thanks. Stuff with kids... Yeah, I mean, that's nice because there's providence to it. So, like, they know that little girl died. I mean, it's not nice that she died, but they know that little girl died. So there's like a little bit of a... I just don't like random little girls.
In general?
No. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I don't like random little ghost girls.
I'm not sure that anyone does, though, to be honest.
I think children are more creepy, aren't they? There's no way I would have stayed there.
Would you not stay there on your own?
No.
So if I said to you now, I'm going to give you £1 million to go and stay in Charleville Castle.
I probably would.
To be fair, I don't have £1 million and you know that, so that wouldn't be a very good incentive.
No, but I probably would for it. That's something I would do for £1 million.
100 quid.
Yeah, I probably would. I would do it. Actually, having said no, I probably would.
I know you would. I know well you would do it.
Yeah, because I'd want to, and I'd be laying there, I'd be waiting for something to happen, and nothing would happen all night, and I'd just be really tired when I came home because I'd have been lying in bed waiting for it.
I'd love to do the ghost tour in Charleville Castle. I'd love to.
A ghost hunt.
We should hit them up the next time we're in Ireland.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, we talked about you on our podcast.
Take us around the castle.
Our really popular podcast.
But I thought it was quite sweet that he said to her, like, I'd like to get some sleep now.
Thank you for checking up on me.
Yeah, and then she just potted off and shut the door. That's cool. That's a different level though, isn't it? Because that's interacting. That's not that. It's not that. What do they call it?
Residual energy.
Yeah, it's not residual energy. That's like the other word. Words fail me. When an interactive, an intelligent.
Well, I guess if she was sliding down the banister and that was how she died, which is really sad. It kind of shows that she died at a point where she was full of life and vitality. What the fuck is that?
That's
vitality.
A butter, I think.
that she was kind of died in her, little girl prime.
Yeah. But I'm really intrigued by what was being dragged across the floor in the other story. Like, when he first said...
Yeah.
Because, like, if there's no furniture up there, I wonder what it was.
Well, it's hard to know, isn't it?
Because that could be residual, couldn't it? Because that could just be, people moving stuff around. So we have to find out what that room is. That room was, rather, from the guy.
Well, it's clearly not being used anymore if it's completely empty.
No.
I think I'd be more interested in that room than Harriet.
I wouldn't. I'd be more interested in Harriet.
Would you?
Yeah, because she's like, there's like intelligent response there, isn't there, from the guy, from Mr. Wenger, asking her to leave and she left. I reckon you could do the ball thing and see if she'd play with it.
Oh, they do it in, is it Waverly Hills Sanatorium where they regularly leave a ball. So Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a sanatorium in America that's like, loaded as the most famously haunted building in America. And regularly people leave bouncy balls for little kids to play with and the balls move on their own. And yeah, look it up. Look up the videos of it. It's weird.
Yeah, Fact and Faked couldn't even get rid of it.
Yeah, Fact or Faked Paranormal Files, which is our current thing. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll know they did a video on it and they couldn't figure out how it worked. Yeah, I just loved that story. I read it once and then I must have been half asleep when I was reading it, and then I read it again and I was like, oh no, this is really scary.
It's always little girl ghosts, isn't it? It's very really little boys.
That's true. I don't know how I'd feel. I don't know if I'd have, I feel like this man is really brave.
Really brave. Super brave.
Because I know he says, I'm not ashamed to say that I was frightened and whatever. But to have the wherewithal to say, thank you for coming to check up on me, but I need to go asleep now.
But you regularly tell me you tell him to F off.
That's what I do. I get frightened and then get overly aggressive. And that's not okay.
Yeah, it's not fair scaring a little girl. Feel ashamed of yourself.
I am ashamed of myself now, thanks. Clearly, I'm not cut out for the paranormal investigator world.
No, he's like super brave because for staying there on his own in the first place, knowing that it's haunted. Like, it wasn't like it was like prior to his investigation. It was after he'd done the investigation and then after he'd heard some paranormal stuff going on.
Yeah,
and he was like, yeah, it's cool. I'll just look after your castle. And then he went around and locked everything up as well, which is creepy.
56 rooms as well.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of nowhere, you said as well, which makes it worse. Yeah, it's in the
middle of a woods. It's cool. But that was but like they said in the history, that was a wood that was used by druids.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So there might be some sort of residual magic shit going on.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better way to say that.
I mean, probably is some residual magic going on.
Yeah.
And it made me think of the little girl in the hotel as well.
What little girl in the hotel?
When I worked in the hotel.
Oh, this is, we've been meaning to talk about this story for ages, but actually now is a really fitting time to do this story.
So I used to work in a hotel in Norfolk, which is in the east of England. There was a story about various different people who'd seen this little girl running around the pub and various different things, but there was no sort of providence to it. But basically, part of my role as a duty manager at the time was to, one of us always had to stay in the hotel, be on call basically in case any of the guests needed us. So there was one night where I was in bed, end of the shift, so it must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I think I was probably nodding off to sleep, to be fair, but I sort of rolled up in the duvet, as you do when it's cold, like double rolled in the duvet, and I felt something tug the duvet and then heard clear as day like a little laugh. Freaked me out. I've since thought that it was probably me falling asleep. That subconscious, as you're just knocking off to sleep, something in your head sort of triggers, that falling.
Yeah.
When you like that and jar awake, it was that kind of thing, but it really scared the crap out of me and I found it very hard to sleep for the rest of the night.
But didn't you tell me that when you were finished your shift, you turn all the lights off and in the morning the lights would all be on again and stuff?
Always. And
you also told me that there was a woman who went up to one of the girls that worked with you and was like, have you seen the little girl?
Yes. Yep. Well, there was one. So there was an old lady that lived in the hotel for the longest time. She was there for about 2 years. And she was quite old, but she was sitting in a chair one time, and like late evening, it must have been at 9:30. She just finished her dinner. She's sitting, and she called one of the staff members over, and she was like, "You need to tell that little girl to behave. She keeps climbing over the chairs." And there was nobody else in the drawing room, like where she was sitting, and it freaked out the girl that she told it to. But
oh, you never told me that.
I did tell you that. I'm sure I told you that one. There was another time where one of the girls who was who I used to work with was sort of in the street in the town, the closest town to the pub, basically, because the pub was in the middle of nowhere. And they were talking about the fact that she worked in the pub, and this woman just randomly came up to her and was just like, "Oh, you work in such and such?" And she was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Have you seen a little girl yet?" And it's just like, "What little girl?" And then went off to tell her the story of seeing this little girl run around the garden.
Oh,
yeah. But I'm pretty sure my experience was down to me falling asleep. But at the time,
it could be down to falling asleep and being subconsciously aware of these stories existing.
Yeah.
And then obviously your brain does that whole, weird thing just before it falls asleep, where it starts to kind of conjure up sounds and images.
Yeah, but that really did scare me. And the other thing that was sort of compounded it with me was the manager just used to tell us off for talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like she was just, there was no like, not even entertaining the thought of it. Like, even when I was like, "Oh no, it wasn't like, it was just me falling asleep." No, do not discuss it around the manager of the pub. It was really weird, and she never sort of elaborated on it.
Maybe she just was freaked out by it.
Yeah, and there was a painting as you went up the stairs to turn the lights off. There was a painting of a little Victorian girl.
Shut!
No, I'm not even joking.
Off!
Like, I think it's probably like the Crying Kid, the one that was like mass produced.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like one of those, but it was just really weird, like having all this stuff going on, and then having to constantly go upstairs to turn the lights on, and then just the last thing you see before you turn the light off is this picture of this painting of this little girl. Bizarre.
That is bizarre. Do you think they'd let us back to do an investigation?
No.
Okay.
No, the manager would never let me do that.
I've just gotten a text to say, "Why is your episode not out yet?" So we're going to have to finish relatively soon.
Can I just say that Lucy also messaged me saying, "It's Sunday, that means episode 15. And I was like, "We haven't recorded it yet."
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I know we've been away. We literally got home and we're like, "Oh, we need to record an episode." So I'm sorry. We've got 2 reviews this week.
Yeah.
So our first review is obviously a 5-star review, clearly. It says, "Wonderful. This podcast is wonderful, fun and funny while still maintaining a very spooky air about it. So glad to have found it because it's brought a healthy cocktail of joy and terror to my daily routine." That sounds like the perfect cocktail, joy and terror. That's a good name for a cocktail, actually. Oh, we need to think about that when we start our mixology business.
It is on the cards.
And our other review says, "Love this podcast. These guys rock. Super entertaining, great format and a great laugh. Love the accents and colloquialisms. Awesome show. Just enough mystery and ghoul with a punch of real and skepticism. Never long enough, winky face." Okay, we get it. I'm sorry. If you haven't subscribed, you should. And that came from Jazza0209 from Australia.
Ooh.
G'day.
G'day. If you see my sister, say hi.
Oh yeah, Dan's sister lives in Australia. Can you do an Australian accent? Because I can't. I can only go koala.
No, you just got to speak up.
And our first review, by the way, came from Chris Rim, who was the person that contacted me on Twitter. Hey, hear from you soon. Lots
the second
of love.
review also had a mixology in it as well. Skepticism punch.
Oh, yeah, real and skepticism punch. Oh, I quite like that. So if you enjoyed our episode, we kind of give you a double story this week.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I enjoyed it. If you enjoyed our episode this week, it is slightly longer than we have previously put out.
At last!
Woo!
Yeah, but is that potentially there's a bit of cutting in it?
Oh yeah, I still need to edit it, so who knows. Make sure that you tell your friends, really. Recommend us to people. Say to people, "Hey, I've got this really great little podcast."
Stop strangers in the street and say, "Hey."
On a side note, when we went to this ghost trail thing last night, there was 2 girls talking about podcasts. And they were talking about this podcast called "And That's Why We Drink." Really, really good podcast, all about like serial killers and murders and stuff. And I was like, "Oh my God, those girls are talking about podcasts." So I spent a good 15 minutes going, "So on the podcast, What sort of episode do you think we need to do, Dan? What kind of podcast hosts over?
Unfortunately, not getting any response. No, I was too busy staring at a window looking for a ghost and never appeared.
And then the girls weren't paying attention to me. Oh, it was all very awkward. But they didn't care. So if you could tell your friends about our podcast, we'd be really happy. Random strangers in the street. Also, if you could come and review us if you haven't already. We're on 47 ratings. Woo!
Ooh,
nearly at 50, I know.
Maths.
Oh yeah, maths again. Thank you to David for sending us in an awesome story. We absolutely loved it.
I also think we're forgetting something.
What?
We've got new artwork and we've not said anything about it.
We do. Before we get on to that, David.
Oh yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you. We love it. David has said that he will answer any questions that anybody might have about this story. So if you've got any questions, I'm going to put his Instagram handle into the description for this episode. Come and ask us questions and we'll pass them on to him because he's more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about this episode. And we have new artwork. I completely forgot. So the gorgeous Somerville did our artwork for us. I've tagged her on Instagram if you want to get her to do some art for you. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Like, I love it so much. And I love our little cat.
I like the fact that it's a likeness of us as well, even though it doesn't look like us. There's a likeness. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not like a direct replica of us, but it's like that you can see the likeness in it.
You can see that it does. And
my tattoo is spot on, by the way. Just if you want to,
mine too.
You want to see how good that is, just look at my tattoo. That is almost an exact
perfect
replica.
I don't really understand how she did it. I'm a little bit blown away. So thank you to David. Thank you to for doing our lovely artwork. And thank you to all of you gorgeous people for listening. And we shall...
You're not going to do any addresses?
What?
You're not going to say Instagram or them handles?
Oh, shit, yeah. Fuck, we're fucking up this week, aren't we? If you want to find us, you can find us on Twitter at
Real Ghost Pod.
And you can find us on Instagram at Real Life Ghost Stories. And you can find us on Facebook in our little closed group called Real Life Ghost Stories Podcast.
And the answer is...
Emma and Dan, obviously. That's us, just FYI. And we shall see you next week.
Bye.